All righty. This is the fourth edition of these Crescat videos we're doing with individual companies. And these are designed to mainly talk about the geology of these exciting exploration plays. We've done three so far. This is the fourth. And this one is Snowline Gold. It's an absolute delight to introduce Scott Berdahl here. Scott is the CEO. He has a much deeper experience with the projects that are involved at Snowline. He and his father put these projects together as prospectors over the past few years. And they've been working in this region in the Yukon. It really identified some of the we'll call it the juiciest or the most exciting opportunities for gold discovery in this frontier region. And to see somebody really build something like this from the ground up, literally just put the projects together, but also then advance them geologically and then now drill them and make discovery, and is quite a delight. But one of the most intriguing things I think about this story is that it's made two, perhaps now three, I think justifiably, you can call it discoveries in their portfolio. It's not to say that's all there is here. This is really choice real estate, but the Jupiter and then Ridge and Valley and now Gracie targets all look like they're delivering indications, whether it's drilling or other data, being major new gold discoveries. And before I introduce Scott further, before I start the presentation about the project and the company, I'd like to introduce Scott a little more. Scott, I've known for quite some time. I've known Scott and his father for quite a few years now. And Scott has a master's from MIT, but he's also got a geology degree from Saudi Arabia, the KAUST Science and Technology Institute. So King Abdul's University of Science and Technology. That's got to be a first for anybody I know. I don't know anybody else that has a degree from there, but that's pretty darn impressive. And Scott's also studied business as well. So he's, the kind of guy that really should be running the next generation of exploration mining companies. It's a delight to see somebody with Scott's credentials come into this space and be so successful so early here. Now, Scott, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you to kind of run through your story. And what I think it would be really valuable to show people is maybe give them a bit of background about the projects, but also you can give them, present some data that shows why these are such a success so far. And then lastly, if you could talk a bit about what your plans are for this coming exploration season, that would be absolutely awesome. Gives people a really good flavor for why Snowline is such will be such an amazing company going forward, deliver a lot of value here. So I'll let you fire away.
Okay, sounds good. Feel free to step in, otherwise I might just launch for the next 45 minutes here. But well, thanks for that introduction, Quinton, and thanks for having me on to chat. Always exciting to talk about Snowline, and always exciting to talk to you too. So, Snowline comes from really 3 decades of poking around in the Yukon. It started out when I was a little kid. My dad started prospecting up here in the Yukon in the 1980s, and dragging me out as well. So, when I was in my single digits, I was out and about, exploring the territory, and it's been a lifestyle for a long time. And like you say, we've built this from the ground up. And over those 30 years, we've explored a lot of country, and we've generally stayed out of the high traffic areas, which in the Yukon is pretty easy to do. There's some big spotlights shone on different parts of the territory from time to time, but a lot of it is really greenfield, really overlooked stuff, and there's a lot of really interesting potential here. So Snowline, I guess as it stands now, really got its launch in the last gold boom, in that kind of 2009 to 2012 era, when things were just gangbusters up here. And a lot of companies came into the Yukon with a lot of money, and put a lot of capital into a lot of different ideas. And so, we had the opportunity to finally get a lot of capital behind various ideas that we'd put forward and various projects that we've staked. And among those were a group of claims that we had staked up in the sort of eastern Yukon on what's now Snowline's flagship Rogue and Einarson projects, as well as Cynthia. We had recognized Cynthia and actually had purchased that from another company at one point in the mid 2000s. And then and we look north to Rogue, where there's this big intrusive complex of these very prospective Fort Knox style intrusions that have just jaw-dropping regional stream geochemistry coming off them, and very little work done. And the little work done, if you look into historical reports, has some pretty interesting, extremely intriguing results, I would say. And that got us kind of looking at the rocks more generally. And my dad had the idea that this is these rocks that are being intruded look a lot like the rocks down in Nevada. I know he's not the first person to have that idea, but we were out there in 2008 poking around for Carlin-style gold mineralization. And in a couple of years later, it was hard to sell that story at that time, especially just as independent prospectors. And we didn't find much evidence for it on our first trip out there. We picked one spot, went, hiked around, and got picked up, a week later, and that was kind of it. But in 2010, Attack Resources made a discovery sort of in a similar neck of the woods up to the northwest of where we were working. And so we jumped on, that was a great confirmation of the hypothesis that these rocks are prospective for Carlin-style gold. And so we jumped in there in a big way. And we had just optioned out that Rogue plutonic complex, and we started staking everything between there and Attack's discovery that had any kind of a pulse. And eventually we pulled together, as far as I know, on our Einarson project, the largest claim package in the history of the territory. And that was contiguous with another 5,000 claim package, about half the size, just to the south, which was our Rogue project. And then we had Cynthia to the south of that. So we had these optioned out to various companies. They were doing a ton of work, and Snowline inherits all that work and all those discoveries. And, when things crashed in 2012 and 2013, all of this extensive data came back to us, all this beautiful data with a lot of really big jaw-dropping anomalies and targets and prospecting discoveries, things up to 152 grams per ton in what's now the ridge zone. You don't usually get that when you get a project handed back to you, but I think companies that spread themselves so thin in the euphoria, and then the crash came so hard that all of this just came back. And so with Snowline, we get to launch a company that is built on not only a very prospective and interesting new district that just hasn't seen a lot of work, but we get to we kind of pass that whole R&D phase where it's very high risk, very kind of slow, deliberate prospecting, looking for these sort of things. And we get to start where we have these well-defined targets. We certainly have more work to do out there to define more targets, but we have a lot of low-hanging fruit. We have a lot of very exciting prospects, and we really have what looks to be a new gold district that the fertility of it is evident in that you see, we do have Carlin potential. There were other Carlin discoveries made nearby. We don't have any sort of bona fide Carlin discoveries on our projects yet, but that doesn't worry us in the slightest. There is very prospective ground for Carlin, and we do have other discoveries, basically epizonal orogenic gold mineralization coming out on a couple of sites, and it looks like there might even be some kind of continuum between that and Carlin prospectivity. That's prospective for now, but and then to the south, of course, we have the discoveries at Rogue, which are reduced intrusion or Fort Knox style gold mineralization, big bulk tonnage targets. And the combination of seeing all of these different styles of mineralization in the same area just speaks to the overall fertility of this area. Just it shows you that there's a lot of gold pumping around, wherever it's coming from, that there is a lot of gold in these rocks.
Yeah, look, that's what really attracted us. I've known you and your dad for quite some time, and I've looked at this data before. It's always been quite intriguing, or that more than intriguing, I got to say. But for the gold market to pick up here and now actually get to be able to work on this, that's the key. Is that it was clear there was a lot of targets here. Now, I'm going to touch base on a little bit just to give some of what you just said, to give some people a flavor for what you guys have here. You did get a lot of data accumulated back about 10 years ago. and in particular, you guys have blag samples. They're blag samples like say Newmont would do over ground that they own. So they're a specialized stream sediment sample. Clay fraction is accumulated and then analyzed, and those give really the best signal that I know of any geochemical technique out there in the market. And looking at the bleg data that you have, I would say that it really stands out. Like the numbers and the size of the anomalies that are present across your tenure is really impressive. Like I would say put the targets I've seen, the bleg data that I've seen, in kind of the upper 10th or upper 10 percentile of any data that I've seen of that type. So really high quality targets. But the other thing is you've got a multitude of different types of geology here. You got, like you said, the Carlin style, and I would actually argue that that is going to be important for you at some point. How you think of the Carlin style, the Carlin deposits are hosted by thinly bedded limestones, and what occurred and exactly how it occurred, we don't know as geologists. I must say they're kind of enigmatic, but in short, fluids came in and they basically reacted with the limestone to produce, generally blanket-like deposits that can be quite volumetric, but also they can be very high grade too. A lot of the Carlin deposits deliver pretty good grades. So, that kind of potential is certainly there. Like you said, ATAC has been in the area for a long time, and I know at least some of the blegs and geochem associated with that looks very Carlin-esque. But you have these other two that you're drilling on last year. I won't spoil it too much, but there is orogenic gold systems, like you said, epizonal orogenic gold. What is that? Well, that's gold that's deposited by fluids that come up from very deep in the ground. They are generated during metamorphic events. So as this region was kind of squished, we'll call it, during collision of the plates, in this case, the Pacific plate with North America, it squeezed, built up the mountains in the region, but it also cooked up the rocks at depth, and those released fluids that traveled upwards and found various nooks and crannies in which to deposit their gold. And in particular, the term epizonal means like surface, like your skin, epidermis. It means that the level at which you're seeing these orogenic systems is fairly shallow in terms of the depth at which they form. Now, why is that important? Well, when you get into the epizonal regime, in other words, the orogenic gold deposits that form at shallow depth, you can find some really, really high grade deposits. Oftentimes that gold, when it gets very close to surface, as the fluids come up, it really starts to dump out due to various responses of the fluids with the surrounding rocks, and decreases in temperature and decreases in pressure and things like this. And you can form these exceptionally high grade deposits. I think what you saw at Jupiter last year is telling us that there's very good potential for that. But now the Tintina type, the Fort Knox type that you mentioned, just for a little background, as this metamorphic process in the collision occurs, sometimes down at the melt rock and granites that melt, the magma that forms when you melt rock deep in the crust starts to rise up through the crust. Once again, these granites that form during this collisional process, they tend to have a chemistry. We call them reduced granites because the chemistry of them is reduced, meaning it's preferentially saturated in sulfur or sulfides rather than oxygen. Just kind of geobabble for most people, but what it means is they can carry a lot of gold. That's the fundamental importance of these reduced intrusions. So these reduced intrusions, when they form, the melts form and they rise up through the crust, they find a level at which they kind of park themselves. They reach neutral buoyancy and they don't want to rise any further. And as they start to cool and crystallize, the fluids come out of these intrusions. Sometimes they don't come out. They actually stay inside the intrusion. They actually basically self-mineralize the granite itself. That's certainly the case at Fort Knox, but they can also emit their fluids out into the surrounding rocks, like the sedimentary rocks and whatnot around the intrusion. But you can form these absolutely immense clouds of fairly homogeneous gold mineralization. You know, on the scale of very fine scale, yes, little fractures and stuff that are filled with quartz and gold might be very high grade, but in general, these things form just absolutely big, we'll call them puffy clouds of gold mineralization. And you know that above everything, I think intrigues me most about what you have on your property is this Tintina Fort Knox, if you want to call it, type gold system, because these things can be absolutely world class. And I just want to make sure people understand the importance of this type of system.
Yeah. And I guess, jumping into Jupiter, I was pretty excited. Back in 2019, I was out there prospecting, and the previous operator had made some nice discoveries there on finding quartz and float, and I went out there and basically stumbled on the 3-kilometer stretch of this stream down from where they were that just contained these fridge to microwave sized boulders with rusty with arsenopyrite and scorodite, and you crack them open and they were assaying anywhere from from a half gram to, I think the highest was around 23 grams. And so, yeah, it was pretty fantastic to see. And it kind of, again, speaks to the underexplored nature that you can go out there and find a stream like this that has never been staked before, that, you just can't miss the potential, or not even the potential, the gold that's just coming down the creek like that. And so, when you think about the prospectivity of these rocks, as we've kind of seen over this past year, and you think about, if you can hide that there, what else can you hide there? And we're seeing that, there is a lot hiding out there. And so that's pretty exciting to be exploring in a place where you can walk up a creek and, hypothetically have a world-class deposit sticking out of the ground that no one would have seen before, just right there. So that's extremely exciting for us. And it was great. Yeah. In 2019, when I came back with a few of these samples, and I ran into you at some conference in between then and 2020. And, I was kind of scratching my head at it because, I've been around orogenic systems and generally think of them in mesothermal terms, or even deeper, or mesozonal terms and deeper. And I've been around epithermal systems, things like, Round Mountain in Nevada, as well as sort of more structurally controlled things. And I saw, a lot of similarities to both. And I was kind of scratching my head. I saw some epithermal textures and so on. And then showed you those rocks at the conference. And I think you walked me over to Newfound Gold's booth where they just made a discovery hole. And, I didn't have the dripping visible gold everywhere, but nonetheless, it was like, wow, okay, this is what we're into. So that was pretty exciting. And since then, reading into Fosterville, reading more into and seeing what Newfound Gold is doing, and seeing the similarities, even just these little acicular arsenopyrites just saturating some of the rocks around these breccia and vein zones, and just the open spaces, the mineralogy, and even finding visible gold in drill core at Jupiter. That was pretty exciting. Well, I'll jump into just a visual here of what I'm talking about. At Jupiter, it took us a little while. Sorry, I've got all kinds of menus to deal with here to get this.
No problem.
Yeah. So at Jupiter, it took us a little while to get into this. This was our second attempt. The first attempt, or the first area that we tried, was good. We hit mineralized structures and so on in every hole, which was great because this is a blind anomaly. So this isn't like I guess Newfound Gold-esque scenario where we have a nice mineralized outcropping vein at surface that you can just step back from and drill, and you kind of, you're able to follow it down. We were kind of scratching our heads here with this. There's a big 3-kilometer soil anomaly that accompanies that float train in the stream, and but it's all covered. And so we didn't know how far the glacial till had come. We didn't know, maybe we knew the anomaly was there. We knew this float was there, but we still don't know of any mineralized outcrops on surface. So obviously these, the alteration around these things are just getting eroded away. There's general till cover, so you might not see it even if they're relatively level with other rocks anyway. And so it was a little bit nerve-wracking, but we knew we had to pull the trigger on exploring this somehow. And so we chose one zone, and we got right away into alteration, into relatively small zones of mineralization. And I think our best hole, our best intercept in that first zone was about 4 grams over 7 meters. So still, exciting stuff to get into that. And just to find like, okay, we've kind of anchored ourselves into the system. And then we picked up on some subtle linears in the south where the topography changed just a little bit. You have a slope coming down and it drops slightly and then it levels out and then keeps going down. And that linear lined up with the area that we were drilling up to the northwest. And so we decided to stick the drill down in that south end. And what you're seeing is the result of those 4 holes that we popped into that linear feature. And so this is really down at the extreme south end of that 3-kilometer soil anomaly, which is open, by the way. It kind of fades out into a till covered valley up to the north. And we still have smoke to follow in terms of it's not totally dead under the till. Drilling into this thing, again, blind. So we had nothing to step back from. You can see these lines do continue. I mean, these lines are totally hypothetical. There's a very preliminary interpretation. It's almost guaranteed to be more complicated than this, but they do line up pretty well with bedding in that area. So there is some kind of a sort of stratigraphically controlled component, whether it's just the permeability of layers, but or even permeability between layers. But there are multiple zones per hole, nice grades, as you can see, zones of up to 13.2 grams over 6.5 meters, as well as some really nice high grade sections. I think the highest was 64 grams over 30 centimeters. And there are a couple of 45 grams over 1.5 meters, 31 grams over 1.5 meters, just, really great stuff to hit. But in arrangement, that's almost open pittable when you look at this, the way that these intercepts kind of stack up against each other. After this, we stepped about 150 meters to the north, intercepted another nice vein. That's I don't have an image of that handy, but again, a similar style of mineralization. And with our last few holes of the season, we decided to on Jupiter, we decided to, we had the discovery in hand, so we might as well get a little bit more adventurous. And so we stepped out over 1 kilometer to the north of this, off trend onto another part of this anomaly where we had no idea how to drill. It was just totally flat, nice soil anomaly, thick overburden. We'll just stick a drill on it, and no harm done. We've had a great season. Let's just give this a shot. We drilled down, got into bedrock finally, got into alteration, hit a vein, cut it open for sampling, and there was visible gold there. So,
look, I really want to make a point here because most people don't understand the process of exploration, how long it takes to make a discovery. Oftentimes, like a lot of targets, a lot of prospects. People might end up drilling dozens of holes before you actually figure things out and see, call it a discovery hole. You guys, in spite of the fact this is blind, you got till, which is basically glacial debris covering a lot of this target. You guys have nailed it, man. You absolutely nailed it. All of the holes in that image are what I would call discovery holes. So, this additional hole that you mentioned, 1.1 kilometer away. So look, I grew up, when I say grew up, I learned exploration from some really, really sharp guys, old timers who, in the industry, like Bill Lindquist and Dan Wood and stuff. These are guys that, most people have heard of, but they were absolutely classic explorers. And one of the things they literally just beat into our heads was that when you make a discovery, when you have a hole that you've hit something, you want to do some step out and drill around it and try to figure out what's going on in that area. But you also want to have a second effort in the background to drill holes that are 500 meters away, 1 kilometer away, because you also want to know how big the system is. You don't want to know just everything about that one spot. You want to know how big the system is, and you guys nailed it this year. You demonstrated you have a bona fide discovery down there towards the southern end, but that hole in the north to just wing ding a hole out there and hit that is mind-boggling. I mean, that tells you right there, this is probably a very, very large gold system.
Yeah, we were definitely, very very excited by those results, obviously, and then and sort of in keeping with that philosophy, and knowing that we have we're not in here just for Jupiter. We're in here on this thesis that there's this unrecognized gold district there. We'd spent a good part of the season exploring down on Rogue, doing a lot of surface work, some geophysics, and then decided to. With the last little bit, it was into September. We had basically time for 4 more holes, and we drilled those down at the valley target. And again, emphasizing the underexplored nature of this district, here's a reduced intrusion that daylight's on surface, so it's been eroded away, and it's about 1 kilometer in diameter what's outcropping, and it has mineralized sheeted veins visible where in multiple outcrops, and yet it's not even on a geological map. So this is beyond prospecting. This is even just as far as mapping goes. Just to have something like that sitting there. And it's understandable because you look at these maps, and there are some more detailed maps that have come from the 90s, but in the north area, like in northeastern Einarson, the units that you see on the current government geological maps there were drawn by a guy named Wheeler, who was out there in 1952 on a 4-month horseback expedition through those mountains. So, and that's kind of it. So it really is a black hole out there. I can bring up a picture of kind of what I'm talking about on our valley discovery.
That would be awesome. Yeah, let's have a look at this. This discovery, I think, is remarkable because, like you said, you made it right at the end of the season, and to see, yet another just remarkable success in one drill season is, I think, unprecedented. I can't think of any other company or campaign I've ever seen where 2 drill discoveries were made in one season like this.
Well, yeah, we were certainly, beyond excited to have this kind of success, but on top of that, and I've said this a lot of times to a lot of people, but it really does offer a huge proof of concept and a huge validation of the idea that we launched this company around. And so I think it's even more exciting than just having 2 for 2 on 2 targets. This is suddenly, the 20 targets. I guess depending on how you classify a target, we've got a lot of interesting smoke in a lot of different areas. I call it a dozen targets that are kind of somewhat like these, and a whole bunch more that could use a little bit more thinking and polishing. Suddenly all those targets are a heck of a lot more exciting. But again, so these are both previously undrilled targets, basically previously unknown targets, just very grassroots at the start of the season. Like I say, Jupiter, we had that soil anomaly. We kind of took a bit of a leap of faith, but we had to start somewhere, and we were rewarded. We approached Valley a lot more systematically. Did the soils grids, did prospecting, surface mapping, and then as these background colors that you can see here are magnetic, aerial magnetics, and you can see what you were talking about, Quinton, with the magnetic low in that reduced intrusion. Basically, it's an ilmenite series intrusion, so you don't get a lot of magnetite, you don't get magnetic highs like you get in some other types of intrusion. But what you do get is that blue color represents a magnetic low, and then those hotter colors like that pink and the yellow and orange that kind of wrap around on the north side of that blue zone. That's the edge. And so when these rocks come through and when they cook the host rocks, they form various alteration minerals. And one of those is pyrrhotite, which is very magnetic and can make these magnetic highs. And so that's kind of just a not a bullseye per se, but just a very clear way of seeing that, okay, there's this intrusion here. Again, there's a lot of till in that valley. We do have outcrops and so on. But that gives us a good idea of what's going on. And then you can see kind of coming out of the center of the intrusion and going off to the west-northwest is this 900-meter long zone of anomalous golden soils. A lot of those samples are, 4 of those samples anyway, are more than a gram per ton, up to about 3 grams per ton in soils. We had one historical soil line that, we actually did, so I don't know if that counts as historical or not, but back in 2016, just kind of running across here, and it had a 4 gram per ton sample in it as well. So, and that's actually up to the kind of up in this area here too. So that adds a little bit more width to this, the length of this trend. And, so we poked those 4 holes into it. The first 2 were kind of designed to test some structural ideas, but it quickly became apparent that, with I think 31 instances of visible gold in these little veins in the first hole, that and throughout the length of the first hole, that okay, these structures, sure, they'll be important in figuring out kind of how this all fits together, but they're maybe not. We're kind of in a bigger system here than that, and so we drew back and started to just cross-cut the overall sheeted vein array, and or one of the sheeted vein arrays in this area, and that's when we got into holes 3 and 4. And yeah, I mean, there's a cross section of holes 1 and 2, targeting structures, but you can see just mineralization kind of throughout these holes. Pretty exciting to see visible gold in these sheeted veins that they're concentrated in the intrusion, but like you said, they do break out, and we do see them both in the intrusion and in the surrounding country rock. And then hole 3, when we finally stepped out and started cutting across the mineralization, that's where we had 1.25 grams per ton over 168.7 meters. So just a huge intercept, and maybe our best hole of the year in terms of gram meters. So that was a pretty awesome way to end the season. And then at the same time, we were, knowing that we wanted to drill valley, we did those valley soils. And but while we were drilling valley, then we stepped out and we were doing sort of broader contour soil sampling. So just a lighter or more sparse way to sample, but it gives you kind of an idea of broader prospectivity in a bigger area. And so we were doing that at the same time. And then so the icing on the cake of those 2 drill discoveries that you mentioned earlier is getting those results back. And we knew about this Gracie zone off to the east. Well, first of all, even just close by the valley anomaly, this ridge zone it's still the valley intrusion. It's the same system, but it just highlights this whole part that we weren't looking at too hard before. And prospecting there revealed a bunch of interesting rock samples, as well as instances of sheeted veining. So it's still happening over on this shoulder of the intrusion. And that 152 gram sample I mentioned when this was handed back to us is up in this kind of cluster of red up there by the ridge. So there's some really high grade material cutting through here, in addition to these big bulk tonnage areas. And then, back to the elephant in the room here is this Gracie trend. Across about 5 kilometers, these soil lines and talus fine sample lines just lit up. Within that Gracie zone, there are, I forget the number now, but I think it's like 8 samples that are over a gram per ton.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's crazy. Like to give people a little perspective on soils. First of all, there is very little vegetation here. So I'd point that out. And when you say finds out of the talus, what that means is in this region you have a lot of broken rock. It's literally just weathering away, producing piles of broken rock. And the crew, it sounds like, was scooping up that broken material and then screening out the finds, and that was what was being analyzed. So it's effectively a proxy, for what's happening in the rock itself. I cannot think of any other Tintina type target I've ever seen that has this scale to it. 5 kilometers is absolutely enormous. The fact you can see, visibly see just huge levels of alteration and geochem here. Soils, we're used to working in the range of maybe tens of ppb oftentimes, or up to maybe a half a gram in case. You've got ore grade soils at Gracie over a big area. I mean, look at this. And then the other thing, like the geochem that goes with it, that's spot on. That's exactly what you want to see. That bismuth and tellurium, highly elevated, right along with the gold. And that's like textbook Tintina type gold.
Yeah, and our operations manager was joking that we should just get out there and just start leaching the stuff to finance future exploration out there. But no, the other thing that makes Gracie exciting, apart from the scale, is just I guess the geometry. Like I said, we knew that the Gracie was there based on this alteration. There's some historical prospecting. It's actually the first target that we went to back in 2008. My father and I, in stepping into this region and poking around, and it was definitely pretty exciting. But it's the intrusion itself is buried there. There might be a few dikes and so on poking through, but for the most part, it's not like Valley where you can go and say, okay, here's the sheeted vein array. Clearly from the surface geochemistry, that the mineralized system has made it through the surface. So, we're going to have gold to follow on surface. And it's already there in the rock samples. But the real prize, I think, is, when you talked about these, these intrusions coming up and kind of reaching neutral points, and they start to cool, and they also start to crack when, you kind of differentiate different fluids out as certain components of the melt start to crystallize and leave other residual fluids behind, including a lot of aqueous fluids, and these kind of they'll crack through it, and you get that shell that forms first because it cools from the outside in, and then as these fluids kind of go through, they have that brittle area to crack, and so the edges of these, and particularly the top and the shoulders of these intrusions, can be extremely fertile or extremely prospective targets for this style of mineralization. And so at Gracie, at Valley, perhaps we're seeing a few edges of those, and we can still follow that and turn it into a spectacular resource, I hope. The potential looks to be there, but at Gracie, we could have that entire thing intact. So that's even more exciting. And when you consider the scale as well,
Let's go back up just briefly, if you could. Could you go back up to the soils that's draped over the magnetics, and let's talk about that for a minute. So I want to just point out, something you mentioned earlier, but I want to make sure people pay attention to this. So the two bluish green areas there. So the one that's kind of under and slightly south of the Ridge Valley area, that's this is gravity, right? Or no?
It's not. It's actually a ZTEM survey. So electromagnetics, basically conductivity.
Okay. All right. So basically it's a resistive blob, but it tells you more or less where that intrusion is likely parked, and it gives a stronger signal. Therefore, you can see like the blue there means it's more resistive rock. Now over here at Gracie, you can see there's that green patch there, which is a bit cryptic, but that's probably telling us that buried intrusion there is just poking its nose up, like it's it's hiding down there somewhere. But I would actually say, given the big conductive aureole around that, the reds, I would say that sucker could be a lot bigger, in my view. I think you got basically two intrusions parked right next to each other, probably coming off of the same magmatic source. But I think that one at Gracie that feels like a big system with a big conductive metamorphic aureole around it. That is huge. Put it in perspective. The Fort Knox deposit. Okay, this is the deposit in Alaska. It's near Fairbanks, Alaska. The pit there is a little over 1 kilometer across. Okay, so basically the footprint of the deposit is slightly over 1 kilometer in scale. You can see you could fit a Fort Knox easily right there at Ridge Valley, no problem. Okay, but when you go over here to Gracie, you could fit multiples of Fort Knox along that 5.1 kilometer strike. This thing could be a beast. Fort Knox has mined, I think they produced 8 million ounces at this point out of Fort Knox. It's got a few years left, probably another 8 years left at, say, 250,000 ounces a year. So that's another 2 million ounces. It's a 10 million ounce deposit. This smells like you have probably a 10 million ouncer right there at Ridge Valley. Grades look very good, by the way. And then over here at Gracie, maybe that's the biggest mothership, okay? And if it proves to be, like if you drill that and you see, a giant reduced intrusion under that kind of carapace of highly altered, sulfidic metamorphic aureole, basically, that thing could be a beast, okay? That could be truly just hands down a world-class discovery. This is the one I can't wait to see some drill holes into this thing. Just can't wait.
Yeah, we're definitely excited by the potential. And I have to say, well, I guess I'd caution anyone listening about the forward-looking nature of those statements. I mean, but we agree that
I've said them, Scott.
is there.
I said them. Madeline will put in a disclaimer. I said them. Okay, I take full
Yeah.
credit. Don't worry.
Excellent. Well, that's what's keeping our exploration team up at night and excited is that there's obvious potential here, and it's no, it's fantastic. So that said, we don't want to just run right at Gracie and poke a whole bunch of holes in it without thinking about it first. This is a great first set of evidence. Like you say, it's obviously clears the threshold for the next stage of exploration. And so we'll be going out there and doing a detailed mag survey over this and a much broader block early in the season, and then complementing it with more surface sampling, more detailed mapping, and with all of that stacked together, I think we'll have a pretty good idea of how we want to drill it and go from there. So we'll start out the season with 2 drills actually on Valley and Ridge, and sort of systematically evaluating that target and seeing how that potential holds together. I think we'll have a clear idea in pretty short order, given the nature of that deposit, of basically increasing that potential and seeing how it stacks up to those kind of expectations, and then moving at least one drill over to Gracie to do those wildcat holes with with the discovery already in the bag, and go and see what we can do. I mean, they won't be wildcat; they're very well thought out. They'll just be the first holes ever into this target, and that's extremely exciting.
It is. All right. Well, that's so. In general, what is your plan for this coming season? Can you describe for folks, what you're going to do at each target in terms of drilling, meters, when you plan to start the season, how long the season lasts, various things like that.
Sure. Let me pull up yet another slide here. So like I said, we're bringing in at least 2 drills this year. We have a drill parked on site at Valley. With those results that we had at the end of the season, we just figured, this looks fantastic. We didn't have the assays back at that point, but we did have the visible gold and the sheeted veins throughout these holes. So we knew we were onto something, and we reached an agreement with the drill contractor just to park it out there, and we'd pick up where we left off in the spring. And so we're looking to start that drill turning again on June 1st. And at the same time, we're mobilizing in a second drill for logistics, and basically we're just going to start it at Valley as well. And so we'll have 2 drills turning there to get things going. Overall, and then we can kind of walk them across to some other targets. We are looking at Gracie, obviously. We have talked, and you and I have talked about this as well, but bringing Ursa onto the table. Ursa is an asset that not many people know about. It's a very interesting sort of side of desk project, but it's one that could easily turn into a spin out. It's a base metal target. We are in the Selwyn Basin, which is just a world-class district. It has several world-class zinc districts throughout it, and we have one of the strongest zinc anomalies in the entire Selwyn Basin on our Ursa claims. And so while we have the resources here, just to kind of peek over the fence and see what's there without getting too distracted from what we're doing is an obvious next step. And so if we do get into something big there, then there's a lot of potential to create value for shareholders through a sale or through a spin out or some other kind of arrangement to kind of get the most out of the base metal assets that could be there and the gold assets that we're pursuing. Obviously, Jupiter is a fantastic setup, and we'll be moving the drills back there. And one other target that I would like to drill this year is called Avalanche Creek, and that's the next year, again, just before we'd launched Snowline, when we were still operating very shoestring kind of hand-to-mouth exploration programs, just took a small crew out to Avalanche Creek, where there was just a quartz sample noted in the historical records that we had, and went out there with a small crew, and that quartz ran 0.3 grams per ton. So that was enough to pique my interest, and kind of for lack of other ideas, just figured, okay, well, let's go look at this quartz piece and see, why is there, that's not a very high grade, as you know, but it's not nothing. And so it kind of piqued our interest, and went out there, and sure enough, there's another flow train, just like at Jupiter, similar styles of mineralization that you see that acicular, that needle-like arsenopyrite in the quartz carbonate mineralization or veins or breccias. And yeah, following that up, you can follow it up into the structure that cuts through a pass. And I had grab samples there. I think the first one I grabbed when I stepped onto the trend was 34 grams per ton. It was great. I just told a soil sampler, just described to him the kind of rocks he might be looking for, and then and sent him off on his way, just a soil sample. And then he just got out of earshot. I was probably 100 meters from where we just talked to him, and looked down and picked up that rock and tried to get his attention, but it was exactly what we were looking for. And yeah, that was the 34.2 grams per ton or something like that. So,
and that's on Einarson, right? This Avalanche Creek.
That's on Einarson. Yeah.
Is it one of those blue stars that's south of Jupiter, or
it is? It's I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but it's just southern of those two zones.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I mean, basically what you're saying is, look at the scale bar there. You got over 10 kilometers between Jupiter and Avalanche Creek, and you're saying you have further epizonal orogenic mineralization. Look, that's the kind of scale that's district scale. Okay, anything above 10 kilometers like that, absolutely. Look at the area that Newfound is working in Newfoundland. It's of that similar scale. So that is really super intriguing. Yes, I fully support it. Get more drills, man. Let's go crazy.
I didn't mean to dodge your question about the where we're allocating those resources and those meters. We're looking to drill at least 8,000 meters, 4,000 meter per drill. I'm confident we can exceed that, but sort of budgeting or not planning our program around that anyway. We do have the budget to do more. At Valley, we can do 3,000. We're basically looking at like a 75-25 split or 80-20 split, similar to what we did last year, where we focused drills on Jupiter and on Valley, similar to how we drilled Jupiter and then, did the Wildcat thing at Valley, or at least did the last few holes on a new target. Now we know that both Jupiter and Valley are high quality discoveries and targets. So we'll keep fleshing them out, keep understanding the continuity, the scales, and the controls on that mineralization, and then stepping out to drill, with that 25% Avalanche Creek and Gracie and potentially Ursa. So okay. That's kind of what's coming down the pipes for us.
Okay, so just a little indication when you might be able to start up there. What is the season?
Like I say, we're targeting June 1st to have that first drill turning again, and the second one very shortly thereafter. We're building a new camp in a really central location, just on that little nub of kind of reddish claim block south of the E in Einarson, and we're basically, we've mobilized in a lot of the materials to build that already. We've been busy, and then we'll start the actual construction and mobilization mid-May, and start getting geological crews out there into the field so that we can have that drill turning and start going on a lot of the surface work to prepare a lot of these other targets and anomalies out there. Like, I think we could have had this conversation and still be pretty excited about Snowline if you erased half of those targets on the map, including both of the discoveries. If we were to dig into a lot of those different stars, you'd find a lot to talk about. So, there is a lot to cover. We basically, with that baseline data set, we've been able to, that extensive baseline data set that covers basically that whole background map, we've been able to vector in on very interesting areas, do a lot of geological thinking in terms of figuring out what's going on there, and really kind of hone in to some really exciting targets. So we're kind of have that first mover position in this district, and it's an exciting place to be.
Well, okay, I really appreciate you taking the time. This is an amazing story. I got to say, this is one of my favorites. I think most people know that, and just can't wait to see you guys get to work. I think this is going to be an absolutely amazing year for the company. I'm going to leave you with one note. Back in, I think, January, when you had the conference in Vancouver, this is the Roundup conference in which, a lot of geologists attend and look at core and meet. They met with you and looked at the core from both Jupiter and Valley and Ridge. Look, I think I had more comments. I had people coming to me. They didn't even know, we were invested in Snowline. I had people say, "Hey, there's this company, this Snowline Gold, absolutely amazing stuff." These are people from big mining companies, and I said, "Oh, really? Tell me about it." Oh, that sounds pretty good. And I will delight in telling them that we own 20%. Yes, we are nearly 20% of the company now. We've been buying stock religiously. We're full believers in this story, and when you guys show the world that you have district scale discoveries here, I can't wait to be the first to tell my friends at some of these big mining companies that they're going to have to pay up.
Sweet. Well, we're looking forward to that too.
Very good story, Scott. Amazing. You guys are hitting the home run here. You also got a good team put together. I got to say, between yourself and the recent additions you made, that's got to be one of the best exploration teams going in Canada. So kudos to you.
Thanks, Quinton. Yeah, really excited about the team here too. The way that's coming together is it's comparable to the projects themselves, and I really appreciate you having me on the show.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll look forward to good news this year.
Okay, sounds good. Take care.